Today, I have the big pleasure of talking with Ally Frias. We're going to be discussing hiring and recruiting trends in 2025. We will be looking into 2024 just to see what we learned from that year, but then specifically focus on what is important for companies this year. What should they focus on if they want to hire and grow a great team for their company? Hi, this is Laura, and you're listening to the CareerBee Talks podcast, where we share all the newest insights on the recruiting world from both sides, the candidate perspective and the company perspective. Let's jump right in. Ali, so happy to have you here. Just so that everyone also gets to know Ali before we jump into the questions. Ali is an expert in business development, but for recruiting companies. So she has a lot of experience in this recruiting world in the US. And we have the big pleasure to also be working together with her to really expand CareerBee in the US. So happy to have you here, Ali.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. I'm so excited to get to have this conversation with you guys and to start working together. Very exciting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm also very excited. And I did prepare some questions for you. So I hope you're ready. I have 5 questions in total. We will start a little bit soft. So the first question that I actually had is in regards to the last year, to 2024. What are the key hiring trends you observed in that year, and how might that impact what is to come in 2025?
Yeah, so I think every year hiring trends are changing, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. I think 2024 was a really interesting year. I think that we saw a lot of growth trends in different markets. And then I think some of them also kind of backed off. But where I think that we really saw this big shift in market trends is taking it all the way back to 2021, 2022, when COVID came, and it really gave way to a new way that companies hire there, and also new expectations that people have for being hired. A lot of companies became remote, and when COVID came to an end and it was time to kind of shift back, people didn't shift back. They actually, I think, shifted forward. Hybrid work schedules or even fully remote schedules became a regular part of people's expectations, where before we weren't seeing that. And I think that this really shifted candidate expectations to they really wanted a strong work-life balance, and companies kind of needed to start abiding to them. The traditional 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, getting up and going into the office, that kind of started to take a backseat to, like I had mentioned, these hybrid work schedules. People wanted more flexibility in their hours. And I believe that the right companies with the right motivated people, I think that this ultimately shot up their productivity, just because people became a little bit happier with their work environment. They became a little bit happier with the expectations of them. Ultimately, I think making them work a little bit harder for companies. So moving into 2025, I think that we can continue to see the shifts. I think that there's a lot of developments in technology and different skills that people are acquiring, especially being tech savvy,
Mhm.
that are making those work expectations, a little bit better, a little bit stronger for both the candidate and the client.
Yeah, I think you talked about so many important topics, and we will just go a little bit more into the depth of 2025. But I really like this shift that you mentioned, into this expectations that many talents have. And if you want to get the best talents, you have to meet those expectations of hybrid work, remote work models. And I just want, even though they are not our sponsor, but I want to give an example of how companies also have become more, creative and use technology to be able to create. For example, we work fully remote, and we have now this, virtual office space where you have like this little persona of yourself, and you can put in your desk and decorate your desk. So I feel like companies have to find creative ways how to keep teams motivated now that they have to offer more flexibility, less everyone being at the same place at the same time. And I do think this has brought so many good things as well, but of course also many challenges. And then you already talked a little bit about 2025, how to embrace it. But let's look more specifically. What would you say are the hiring trends that we will see even more in this year?
So I would say looking into 2025, some of the trends that we're seeing is the development in AI recruitment. I think it is such an incredible tool for finding leads. I think it's so great for marketing. I think that it really has the skills to adapt to the different people that it needs to reach. Um, One thing I would say is that with all of the technology and tools that are coming with recruitment, I think that it's really, really important to take a step back and really connect with your candidates. I think that when you are looking at hiring, there is a lot of things that AI can do, but I think that having a conversation with somebody, really sitting down to understand what is going to motivate them, what their ultimate underlying needs really are, is so important when you're bringing in somebody new to your company, or even as a candidate looking to step into a new role at a company. If you're looking to stay there long term and you want to build a career, I think it's so important to really understand what motivates both sides. I think that there's something to be said for having a conversation and, hearing a tonality. I think that's really important to know, is this person excited about this job, or are they just kind of going through the motions because, that's what they think that an employer wants to hear. And I think, somebody AI can, it can find somebody that checks all the boxes, and I think that it can find the right candidates, on paper. But at the end of the day, taking that extra step, being personable, developing a relationship is what is going to ultimately hold retention for whatever position you're looking to get filled or that you're looking to take.
Yeah, I love what you say. It's like this mix or this bringing together of the technology advancements that are really advancing super fast, and we're going to see so much more of it this year. But then what you really said, and I love that part about HR, which is also why I am so passionate about it. There's this human factor that only humans can meet to some degree. And that's why I love how in HR both come together, and they have to come together even more as technology advances. So I think it was a perfect example of what to focus on. And you did say one word, and that I'm going to build my next question on that. Very much in the beginning of your answer, you mentioned skills. So if you are a company recruiting, what would be the key skills that they will be looking for this year? What are the high in demand skills?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would say um, having digital literacy. We keep kind of circling the topic of AI and all of the different tools that are coming out. And I would say, companies are utilizing them. And I think that it's really important to be savvy, at least a little bit. I definitely
Mhm.
had to make the adjustment because I myself was not very computer savvy. But in order to, stay competitive in a competitive job market, you have to learn how to use these tools because everybody is utilizing them at this point. And one thing that I definitely experienced in my own and experiences with interviewing and finding different positions is companies are wanting somebody that wants to step into a leadership role. I can't tell
Mhm.
you how many times I sat down in an interview in front of somebody, um, and they outright told me that they don't want somebody that's going to keep a seat warm for the next 20 years and retire in their role. They want somebody that is motivated. They want somebody that wants the next step up or to even hold a management role. They want somebody that is going to come into their company, and drive it forward, and ultimately find somebody to replace them so that they can take that next step forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's really, really important to employers right now because companies are growing like crazy.
Yeah, and the life cycles have become, shorter of
Hmm.
even like a role per se needed in the company. I mean, the life cycle of that role has become shorter because things are changing and you need to evolve within your role. So I think the skills you mentioned are super important. Would you say there are specific jobs that are currently being sought after a lot by many companies?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of what we do has to do with engineers. So I think
Yeah.
on the, IT side, just to touch on that a little bit, software developers. I cannot tell you how many companies are reaching out to me saying that they need a good, solid software developer and somebody that is innovated and can almost come up with new ways to do things or, more efficient things that they can implement in their skills. And then I would say we do a lot of work on the industrial side as well. And environmental engineers are something that that I keep hearing that companies need as well. So very interesting to kind of see, the trends of what's going on in the world today, and what is kind of becoming important to different people, and how that translates into the job trends. And then one thing on both sides for both IT and environmental is sales representatives. Companies
Mhm.
are ready to grow and they need people to come in and sell their products.
Yeah, absolutely. I fully agree. And I even was listening to a podcast recently, and they were also saying, like, in times like these, the important things is to really grow. So some of the companies are investing less in the development of the product and more in like really getting out there, using the potential of growth right now. And only when they are at the stage again, they will hire again even more like software developers to continue building the product. So it's a very interesting time, and it's very cool that we can connect two sides of the world, because you're telling me from the US perspective what you see, but I can agree that this is also happening in Germany a lot. Like, this sales roles are very much sought after at the moment, so it's really interesting to see that, same positions are being recruited for in various parts of the world. Well, now we talked about so many options and possibilities for this new year, which is really nice. But let's look at challenges on the other end. What do you think will be some of the key challenges when we look at recruiting in 2025 that companies should be aware of?
Yeah, yeah. I would say that one of the biggest challenges, and it's one that we see within our company every day, is the job market is competitive right now.
Mm.
I think that it's almost ignorant for a company to think that they can throw out a mediocre offer and expect somebody to take that, because that is not what is happening anymore. People are ready to go to work. People want to go to work, but they also know that they have the opportunity right now, because it is so competitive, to get a top notch offer. And if companies aren't offering that, and, they are kind of stuck in the old ways, they're not wanting to be flexible, they're not wanting to give people that work life balance. I think that they're going to lose out on a lot of really, really great candidates. And, one thing that, we experienced recently with a candidate, a company, they didn't give their best offer for the first offer. It was very easy for us to come back and say, hey, this candidate wants a better offer and they deserve a better offer. Because, at the end of the day, we do advocate for both sides.
Mhm.
And they ultimately gave the candidate that offer. But at the end of the day, the timeline for getting that candidate, it was too long, and the candidate ended up taking another job. And so, companies need to be so concise in their recruiting process. They need to really, really streamline that interview to offer time, and they need to do better. I would say I think that a company that can really nail that down, they're going to get good solid candidates, and they're going to get them quickly. But companies that kind of want to lag and waste time, or try and not give the best offer the first go round, they're going to feel that, and it's going to be really, really hard.
Yeah, I love that you pointed this out, because it is so important to talk about it. And also here, like, again, even in Germany, we have had a similar example as well, where like also this one candidate, he was like, he already had three other offers. And then this one company thanks God it was like his dream company as well. So we could kind of hold him to it. But, he was having these other offers and the company was still being like, oh, wait, now the manager is going to go on a vacation for 1 week. So hold him for one other. And I was like, we're talking about great candidates. If you wanted a great candidate, be a great company for that person, show them. And I feel like this is so important to talk about because times also changed. There was a time where companies had this flexibility of taking the time they wanted and
Hmm.
making as many rounds of interviews as they wanted. But now, like, even hiring should have become a little bit like shorter cycles as well, and it hasn't. It's still the same process as it was like many years ago. So I think that what you pointed out is super important to talk about. Well, looking a little bit at the time, I do have one final question for you. And of course, we are also a recruiting agency, but that's why I'm so interested to also see your perspective on it. What role do you think recruiting agencies will play in this year? Are they still important? Are they not that important anymore? How do you kind of observe the market?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I am a little bit biased because of what
Of
we
course.
do. I'll be honest. But, at the end of the day, I think that recruiting agencies are really, really important. And I think where they can be utilized the most, obviously, big companies are going to use them. But big companies, they have a lot bigger platform. They're able to reach a lot more people, and when you're a big company, people want to come work for you. So I'm not saying that there is not a place for recruitment agencies within big companies, but I think where people really, really see the benefit of a recruiting agency is the kind of mid-level sized companies, the ones that maybe don't have their own department that is dedicated to recruitment. Maybe they have, an HR person that is, wearing 10 different hats and having to do all sorts of things throughout their day. And then, oh, now we need to go find a specialized engineer for you when, recruitment isn't their job. And, it's ultimately taking away from what they could do because recruitment takes time,
Right.
and it takes resources. I think where recruitment agencies really hit their stride is looking at one that's specialized. So, very similar to us, we specialize in engineering. So we're in the market every day. We're talking to different candidates. We have an established pipeline. We have invested heavily in the
Yeah.
tools to make sure to enrich our data and to make sure that we're reaching the right people. Um, somebody that's not going through that process every day, they're not going to have that pipeline, they're not going to have those resources, and they may not have the financial resources to put into these tools because they are expensive.
Right.
And this is something that not only our recruitment agency is doing, but this is something that every recruitment agency is doing, or at least should be doing.
Right.
And so, with us, being in that market every day, we understand the different trends. We understand exactly what people are looking for. So we can ultimately be a consult to them, to different clients. And we're able to let them know if they need their position filled fast. We have the ability to do that, and we're able to coach them in a direction that is going to get their position filled with a candidate, that's going to be the right fit for them ultimately. And I think that
Mhm.
that's where recruitment agencies really come into play, because at the end of the day, the client knows their business. They know exactly the person that they need in there, but they may not have the right resources to do that. And if you're working with the right recruitment agency, they'll understand your motives, they'll understand your pain points, and they'll find you the right candidate.
Yeah, yeah, this was like such a great quote that we could make out of this episode. I really love that. And I always like just to add on what you just said is when a company tells me like, oh, you know what, I really don't like working with recruiting agencies. I always tell them like, well, you don't like working with the wrong recruiting agencies because when you work with a good recruiting agency, it really feels like an extended team, someone that really lifts off weight because recruiting is so important. It's like the essential part of your company are the people who will work for you. So not working with someone that has the expertise or could make your life easier, could find the better candidates, that's like not investing in the right place in your company. So it does make sense, but you need to find the right agency for you and for your company. And that's like the way to success of working with recruiting agencies. But thank you so much, Ali. I learned a lot from this conversation. Of course, so excited to continue having other conversations on so many important topics. I will leave the link to your LinkedIn profile in the show notes. So for everyone who wants to connect with Ali, there you got the link to her profile, and she shares many, many tips on recruiting. So make sure to follow that to also get inspired. Thank you, Ali, and we talk soon again.
Of course. Bye, Laura.